membership, kind of share some thoughts on where we are, where we're going, and this is intended more than anything simply to get feedback from you, the members, about what you think about the golf course itself as well as the golf operations. We're looking for input, feedback, and just like to hear what you guys have to say. But having said that, Philip's going to say a few words about the golf course operations, and then I will come back and talk a little bit about the golf course. And then we'll just open it up for your questions and comments.
Hi. Good afternoon, everybody. My comments are going to be brief. Two weeks ago, I spoke at the town hall. I did give an update at that time. Today, what I'd like to do, if there are any questions that you have, my co-chair, John Tian, and some of the golf committee members are here today, along with Jason. We welcome your questions and dialogue, whether it's today or if it's sometime during the course of the summer. Please approach any of us at any time. I think we're off to a great start. I've gotten some good feedback so far, and I look forward to that continuing. So I guess the only one thing that I would add that's slightly different from my presentation 2 weeks ago is that we removed the no-play zone stakes on 18. We got a lot of feedback on that. A subcommittee of people led by Brian Hamilton had made a recommendation. If you recall, the USGA published new rules to encourage pace of play, and we had adopted that on a trial basis. We had it in place for 2 months, and we just received a lot of feedback that that the membership would like to keep the red stakes off of 18. So we removed them yesterday, and the rule will apply as it did last year. There's no penalty for going over into the drive. So with that, I don't know, Dwayne, did you want to go into a presentation, or I'd be happy to take questions if anybody has any comments on the golf course operations.
I think we can just take questions if they exist for Philip now, and when I have my discussion, we can just take questions as we go through it rather than just waiting for the end. So if anybody has any, now's your opportunity.
Well, you're moving the stakes on 18. You're not moving the penalty area on 15.
That's right.
Talk to a little bit about.
Yeah. So first of all, I said red stakes, but I'm not the expert on this. Brian Hamilton. I don't think Brian's here, but if Jason can back me up. The difference between when they were on 18 and 15, if you'll notice at the top of the red stake, there's a green indicator. So that indicates. And the thought was that last year when there was a red stake there, if you hit it up close to the green, there was no area to drop. And if you were close to the green, you got a favorable drop closer to the hole. There wasn't a place where you could go back. And so we decided as a committee that a more fair way would be to institute the one drop zone that's just beyond the two front bunkers. So it was really that those no-play zones extend beyond the green, they wrap around the green. And the reason for that is, as I explained, the red stakes would give you a player an advantage if they hit their ball into Pleasant Bay.
On the left of the green, it's hard to find it. They're over the green, use the rocks.
Over, possibly, yeah.
Doug, I think when I talked to Brian about that, is that if it goes over, it ultimately just seemed that if you were getting closer to the hole, it was harder not to be dropping it because it's getting you closer to the hole. And then that initial drop zone, before the green was really the best option.
Phil, for the benefit of the video, if you could just talk into the microphone. Okay, very much. Maybe you can take it out. Maybe you can take it right out.
Back is hurting me.
We're all friends. That's okay.
Anything else? I don't mind. No questions. I'm gonna assume everything's good. But as I said, welcome your input and feedback. I do think Jason and his staff are off to a terrific start. just the level of interaction. I give you some kudos with the membership and the engagement, both on and off the course. I think has been terrific. So well done, guys. Thank you. So, Randy, and I'll be here for the rest of the meeting if anything else comes up.
For those of you who attended the meeting a few weeks ago, this may be a little bit redundant, so I apologize for that. But again, this is just an opportunity to tell you a little bit about what's going on the golf course. If you go to the next slide, I just would like to give everybody a staffing update. At the annual meeting last year, I had shared with the membership how dire the situation was on the maintenance staff in terms of both attracting and retaining quality employees. If you could flip forward one more slide. Thankfully, the Finance Committee and the Board of Governors did invest considerably into our maintenance budget, so we were able to increase our compensation. In addition to that, Frank was utilizing Indeed, Google, LinkedIn, and as well as the club website to help attract new staff. I'm pleased to say that we are now fully staffed for 2019, largely due to the more competitive wages that we're paying the club. As far as the seasonal staff go, we've been able this year to attract a lot of college students. Excuse me. Fortunately, I don't have my sheet that lists all the colleges that they are from, but we've got a great group of really hardworking individuals who we've been able to put out there with their machetes and with their clippers and pruners to do a lot of work that we weren't able to accomplish last year. So. Hopefully you see some of the results of that as you're out in the golf course and can enjoy the fruits of their labor. Next slide, please, John. Just like to give you an update on our architect situation. If there are any of you out here remaining who do not know, we had some trouble with our architect, Keith Foster, or rather he had some trouble. Keith and his wife ran a luxury home decor business down in Virginia. And at some point last year, he was caught by U.S. Customs smuggling endangered or extinct animal artifacts into the country for sale to customers within his practice. He ultimately pled guilty to these charges and was sentenced to 30 days in prison, which he has now served. But at that time, late last year, both the Green Committee and the Board of Governors felt that we should cut ties with Keith. This was communicated to him by Frank Hancock. Keith did understand the situation, and at this point he's just trying to put his life back together. That does leave us without a consulting golf course architect, and I just wanted to give you an update as to where we stand in terms of trying to find and identify a new architect to help us along. So in late December of last year, a small committee began meeting and discussing the process to determine a new consulting architect. Some of our current needs are to weigh in on the final few elements of Keith Foster's recommendations, which are outlined in the draft master plan, as well as assessing our draft master plan and making recommendations as to how they see it could be improved. Through this process, we did speak to some outside counsel, including Rand Morissette, who's a golf course architecture historian and the founder of Golf Club Atlas. We spoke to Jeff Shackelford, who is a golf writer, an architect, and an occasional host on the Golf Channel's Morning Drive. And we also spoke with Ron Witten, who is the architecture editor of Golf Digest magazine. Through this process, we decided that we really do not need a marquee name like a Doak, a Hans, or a Corin Crenshaw to help us with these last pieces of the puzzle and moving forward. We were essentially looking for three potential qualities. We want someone who is a younger up-and-comer, potentially a Foster protege, and those people who are restoration specialists. At this point, we are nearing completion on our initial candidates, and I can share the names of those people with you right now. Riley Johns, Kevin Hargrave, Bruce Hepner, Andrew Green, and Kyle Franz. These are all people that have worked with those marquee names that I mentioned before. They've got a great deal of experience. Frank has already had an initial phone conversation with each one of them just to gauge their interest, gauge their availability, and just kind of start to feel them out a little bit. Ultimately, we hope to narrow this list down to 3 candidates, at which point we would have them visit the club to tour the golf course with Frank and also present to the Green Committee. We hope to do that sometime in July or August. Beyond that, we would have potential select site visits to that architect's work at different golf courses, and Frank would be doing that in late August into September once his schedule settles a little bit. Through this process, Frank and I will also be talking to the superintendents as well as the Green Committee chairs where each of these architects has worked before, just to get a sense of their feeling about the architect's work. And we ultimately hope to have a recommendation coming to the Board of Governors from the Green Committee by the fourth quarter of this year. Again, once hired, we would like that golf course architect to review our master plan and weigh in, review the most recent proposed work from Keith Foster and weigh in on that and make any additional suggestions, and then simply consult on an as-needed basis for any future projects that are contemplated. Any questions about that or the process or any thoughts? Okay, that leads into the master plan itself. When we hired Keith, we never really had what I would consider a written master plan. It was rather more of a dialogue, and Keith's thoughts were put into paper with that rendering that's on the side wall over there on the golf course, but we have never really had a narrative, if you will, with the master plan, what it should be for the golf course, how we want to operate and maintain the golf course, and what our goals are over the long term. Back in 2017, the Long Range Planning Committee had suggested to the Board of Governors that the Green Committee should come up with a master plan for the golf course, which began in earnest back in towards the end of 2017. In 2018, a subcommittee working group was formed, which included Ed Benz, Jack Bowman, Doug Hamilton, Frank Hancock, Bill Healy, Jan Hoynacki, and myself. And as we worked through this process, there were many different people and groups that we consulted at one or more times throughout our process of constructing this plan. That included past presidents, past Green Committee chairs, Keith Foster, Rand Morissette, who I mentioned earlier, the Golf Committee, Brian Hamilton, and the Board of Governors. The document that's been presented on the website has been unanimously approved by the Green Committee, the Golf Committee, and the Board of Governors. However, it is still in draft form as we are seeking input from the membership. How are we going to do that? Well, today is an opportunity for you to share your thoughts on the master plan. At the end of the presentation, my email address will be up on the screen. If you'd like to email me and don't feel like sharing your thoughts in public, that's fine as well. And you can also speak to any of those subcommittee members that I mentioned or a Green Committee member. But once we evaluate this feedback from the membership, the document will be revisited, edited, and republished again for membership review. It will remain in draft form until we have received input from whomever we hire as a new golf course architect. So at this point, hopefully those of you who have the interest have had an opportunity to review the plan. And if there are any specific questions on anything that's outlined in that plan, I would be happy to do my best to answer it. If I cannot, I will reach out to one of my committee members who may be more informed than I. John.
Alrighty, I've got two sort of overview observations and questions. One is that nowhere in this document are the words general manager used. And under the management structure of this club now, I think that's an oversight. Because clearly John has ultimate operational oversight for his managers. And I think that would be something to think about.
Okay.
The other thing that occurs to me is that this document is sort of a what document, that's the how, and it doesn't integrate with what it is that it will take to get this plan done, in equipment, manpower, and facilities. So I think it needs to integrate somehow with the overview of what it takes to run a golf course. And it's more than just plans for this hole and that hole and the other thing. It's how you get it done, what you need, facilities, resources, and so on.
Sure, that's something that we could certainly look at integrating into the plan, John. I think our goal in constructing this plan was to be broader, if you will, and more philosophical as opposed to, it was more strategic than tactical, I would say, but we can certainly look into integrating those elements into the plan. Doc?
John, this document, as it's evolved, is an aspirational document. And it includes a lot of the things that the Green Committee, the board, and now the members aspire to. But it's not an operational document. It doesn't have a business plan attached to it that says, you know, we're going to allocate so much money each year for these purposes. It's a great thing. In fact, it's very common for business plans to evolve from master plans. But this document does not include a business plan.
Is there some other place in the presentation where the details of the work to be done over the next 5 years is going to be addressed, or is this the right place for a question on that?
No, you can certainly ask a question about that, but I would say anything that is in this plan right now that is aspirational or looking to the future is subject to change, simply because the one major element that should come out of this plan to every member here is that despite some of our Green Committee, for example, experience and knowledge about golf course architecture, we should not necessarily be the ones who are making major decisions on the golf course. That's why we hire a consultant to give us the direction and the whys and the wherefores. Now, that doesn't mean that we blindly listen to our architect in terms of what they think should happen on the golf course. I can cite numerous examples of things that Keith Foster has proposed over the years that the committee has decided not to move forward with for a variety of reasons. But the overriding concept within this master plan is that we are a great club. We're a highly recognized club, and we should have a consulting architect who is giving us the direction. So please, I'm happy to answer any questions about what's proposed, but that is all subject to change.
It was a very general question. It wasn't about why are you putting this bunker on this hole. It looks like most of the work that's potentially disruptive to play is being concentrated in 2020, and it seems like that may have been a conscious decision to try and do that. And I'm just curious if you have a feel for what the impact of the course is going to be, how long certain holes may be closed or unplayable.
Sure, that's a good question. I would say that standing here right now, I think it's highly unlikely that any work is going to occur in 2020. The major reason for that is that work proposed on both the 10th hole and the 18th hole will require conservation approval. 2020 is only 7 months away, and we hope to do this work as opposed to the work we've done in the past in the spring, March into April, where we get a lot less play than we do in October and November when the work has traditionally been done on the golf course. So hopefully, whenever it occurs, it will be less disruptive to golfing than it would be as we've done it in the past in the fall when the weather's much nicer here. But I would anticipate the work that's on paper right now in this master plan would be expected to take about 6 weeks. So mid-March to the end of April. It would not close the whole golf course down. It would close certainly some holes down, namely 10 and 18, and the rest of the work is really just kind of clean up. Anyone else?
Randy?
Oh, sorry, George.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate the Greens Committee on the condition of the golf course right now. I found it much more playable than in past years, and so as a longtime critic of things, I'd like to express that. I do have one suggestion. When we come to the club to dine, usually they ask us what our experience is. I think it would be very helpful. At one point in time, there were cards given out by the pro shop relative to what your experience was on the golf course. And I would suggest that for member satisfaction, that might be helpful. I say that with the past experience that I had a few weeks ago. We had the opportunity to go over and play, which is probably considered the #1 course in the world, which is Royal County Down in Port Rush. And during that period of time, and the people that were with me can attest to that, we did not see, while we played the course, any work or workers while we played. I personally feel as though a golf course, whether it's the best golf course in the world or the worst golf course, the experience is dictated by who you play with and whether you enjoyed yourself. And whether it's the best golf course in the world or the worst one, that experience can vary. So, you know, I'm very in favor of a long-term plan. And, however, I just wonder if the disruption is going to increase the experience. And I firmly believe that this is a members golf club, not a quote-unquote championship golf club. So I just thought I'd express my thoughts in that regard. But I do think the course is in wonderful condition right now, and I appreciate all the help that you've done in that regard.
Thank you, George. You brought up several things. I'm going to try and hopefully hit them all. First of all, with respect to the feedback and the member experience, I'm sure that's something that Jason and John can work on, getting some comment cards put together for the golf course experience. I would certainly support that. I couldn't agree with you more, George, that this is a members golf course and not a championship golf course that's intended to host outside events, etc. I think one thing that has occurred over the last 15 years as we've improved the golf course is that our notoriety has increased significantly, and that's been identified as, you know, now being one of the top 50 golf courses in the country, as rated by some of these golf publications. I can assure you that that is a byproduct of the work that's occurred here. That is not a goal. That was never an intent, was to get the recognition and the notoriety. But I do believe that Frank and his staff take great pride in the work that they do here on the golf course and what they present both to members as well as the guests that we all bring here that can't imagine the golf experience that they have until they've been out here. But I'm not sure, George, if you want to expand on the guys out on the golf course when we're playing. I'm not sure if you meant during projects or if you just meant during routine maintenance.
For instance, primarily, this is my thought. We close the course entirely on a Thursday morning every day of the year so that the maintenance people can go out and do whatever they want to do. You know, I would just like to have maybe 2 afternoons where there weren't any maintenance people, there wasn't anybody cutting the fairway, that they weren't fixing the things. That's my thought, you know, and I may be in the minority in that regard, but I can remember a little book that I read, and it was sort of about a walk a long time ago, and it reminds me of a father and the son just out walking the golf course, no interruptions, very quiet and a peaceful experience. It seems to me that they're always working on the golf course. That's just my experience. I welcome anybody else's thoughts in that regard. And one of the things I do think is that we should be looking at electrical machines. And I comment, Peter's Auto I know is looking into some, but a lot of people now have electric lawnmowers, electric trimmers. I was over here one day, and I think our president was here. We were commenting on the noise with the gas trimmer. So maybe as I get older, I'll get a little more fussier than I am. But that's my thought.
Thank you. One of the things that we do try and balance with the maintenance crew is being able to get people up as early as possible in the morning with doing what is required to be done on the golf course. And while it's not part of the master plan, I can share with you the deck of what exactly occurs on every single hole, every single day of the week out here on the golf course, and it is an immense amount of work, and it takes time to get the golf course ready for play each and every day. I'm sure, George, that we could, do some work on impacting the work on the course later in the day, but unfortunately that would probably result in not opening up the golf course until 8 o'clock as opposed to 6:45. And I know that there are quite a few people that would interrupt. But your points are well taken. As it relates to the technology, I would say that we are constantly evaluating new technologies, and there are several criteria that we look at, the most important of which is this new technology effective. because if it's not effective on the golf course, we're not going to use it. Number two, is it cost effective? And number three, will it improve the member experience? So we are, you know, we don't want to be the first adopters. We don't mind being early adopters, but we definitely do not, for the most part, want to be the guinea pigs with these new technologies. So, you know, we usually like to see the new technology come out, have a few years to season, work out the kinks, and then, you know, on Gen 2 or Gen 3, that's typically when we want to engage with new technologies.
Thank you.
Thank you for your thoughts. Again, please ask questions at any time. There are a couple of odds and ends that I'd like to address as well, things that come up in comments from the membership to the committee to me, just things that I hear in conversation. One of those things is stones in the bunkers. And I just want everybody to know that every bunker is hand raked and the stones are removed on a daily basis when the course is prepared for play in the morning. I think many people assume that these stones enter the bunkers from below the sand, when in fact, the stones are actually entering the sand from the faces of the bunkers, below the grass line, down to where the sand leads up to the edge of the bunker. The force of water, both from rain and irrigation, and simple geology in general, creates pressure that loosens the material below the surface, and that pressure just forces the stones to work their way through the soil, follow gravity, and then just ultimately end up in the sand. So it's not that we're not maintaining the bunkers. You know, we've looked at solutions over the years about, you know, putting some type of a cap or liner in the bunkers, which really wouldn't solve the problem because, again, it's not coming out of the base of the bunker, it's coming out of the face of the bunker. And we do maintain it to try and remove as many stones as we can when we're preparing the golf course for play each day. One notable change in the rules, which hopefully you're all aware of, is that you can now move a loose impediment within a bunker if it interferes with your shot without any penalty. So I'm hoping that that simple rule change will reduce some of the chatter about stones in the bunker, because we are really maintaining it, trying to do the best we can to keep as many stones out of the bunker as possible, but you now have a solution that will not interfere, that will prevent stones from interfering with your shot. I'd also like to talk about the cart paths. That seems to be a source of considerable angst. You know, if you've ever been behind a cart on the cart path when it's been dry, it is dusty. You know, one of the things that most members of the Green Committee, I'd say all members of the Green Committee, and hopefully most of our membership believes, is that just the aesthetics of these golf cart paths, are in good keeping with Eastward Ho. The color is right, the texture is right, but we do have the problem with the dust. When we're fully staffed, as we are now, we're generally able to keep the dust to more manageable levels by using water and wetting agents in the path mixture that hold the moisture down and keep the dust lower. The most effective long-term solutions, however, are under investigation by the Green Committee at this point, and I suspect that it may not be the most cost-effective solution, but it's probably the most effective solution in the long run, is to have a colored concrete cart path that also has aggregate pressed into it, so it maintains that pebbly look and kind of in keeping with our seaside location here. Frank, you know, we really haven't even gotten deeply into this at the committee level, but we will in the coming months, and we'll hopefully be able to come back to the Board of Governors as well as the membership with some solutions. But until then, I just ask for some patience. You don't need to be right on somebody else's back bumper when you're on the cart path. Just give it a little distance, and it's surprising how much 40 yards will dissipate the dust and reduce it from interfering with your breathing. So I'd like to talk about the no carts policy. You know, we want our members to enjoy the golfing experience as often as they can here at Eastward Ho, but there are certain times, however, when the health of the golf course is, it outranks the availability of golf carts. Everybody knows that this golf course is built on sandy soil. However, we're very close to sea level, and the water table is very high here as well. So as a result, when we get a lot of rain as we have in the last few weeks or months, there is ultimately nowhere for this water to go after a certain point, and we simply become waterlogged. It's not a drainage issue. We have soil that drains very well. We have great drainage systems that are installed on the golf course. It's just sometimes we reach capacity. So, for example, if you had not been here in the last couple of weeks to see the amount of water that our course has absorbed, and you were told this past Wednesday that after 9/10 of an inch of rain overnight, that golf carts were not allowed on the golf course, I can understand your frustration on the closure. nonetheless, I'd rather have, the membership be informed about the situation. So I just want to thank you in advance for your understanding when the golf cart's not allowed on the course. We do everything we can to get them out there, but sometimes we just can't get them out. It's going to harm the golf course.
Is it possible with the introduction of Visage in September that we might be able to get carts on the course even after heavy rains?
I always believe in under-promising and over-delivering, so I think there's a possibility that that exists, but I would not want to warrant that that's going to be the case. It's our hope that that's the way that one of the benefits of this Visage system was presented to us is that there are certain areas where we just don't want the golf carts to go in certain fairways that we could cordon off and prevent the carts from doing any damage that way. I'd like to see that in practice before I promise anybody or make an inference that that is actually going to happen. Dave?
Randy, what are the immediate plans, if any, for the following tees? Tee number 3, tee number 9, tee number 12, and tee number 14.
When you say immediate plans, David, tell me what you mean by that.
Within the next year or so.
I don't believe we're going to do anything to any of the tees until we have an architect who's on board who can review those plans. I know that plans have been proposed to install a new tee on 9 up above the 8th green, to install a new tee on 12 back behind where that area was all cleared out this past winter. That was done, by the way, because it just looked terrible. Not, a side benefit of that is that if we do install a tee, it's ready to go and cleared out. The third tee, I don't contemplate any changes being made to the third tee at this point. I don't think there's anything in the plan. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bill?
No, it's not in the plan, it's been discussed, it's not in the plan.
And the 14th tee, my personal viewpoint is that if we could ever reclaim the tee that existed when the golf course was first built, that would be a fabulous opportunity to reintroduce an original Fowler element to the golf course, but that is not presently part of the plan. It's been contemplated, but there's nothing specific to do that. Again, I would just reflect anything that's in the plan as part of the proposed 2020 work, which is probably going to be in 2021, if not later than that, is all subject to review by whomever our consulting architect is. Bill.
Randy, Mike Jones heads up the safety committee, and somehow he stuck me on that too. One of the issues that we've heard from a lot of folks is the new bunkers on the 16th being a safety issue. Because, if you know the course, you know it's there, but if you don't, you're a guest, the Cape Cod Hospital thing, it can really be a serious issue. Is there any chance of, I know they don't like to put signs up, but maybe a little fence or a little, something?
Yeah, I think Visage is going to address that problem because you will not be able to drive within probably 10 feet of those bunkers. The cart will physically stop and you will not be able to drive into the bunkers. So I think that's the solution, Bill.
Okay.
Jack.
I just had a couple of clarification questions. One recommendation, if you're considering rebuilding that back 14 feet, I would put George in charge for that particular project, because he did a great job on 8.
Jack, what tee did you say?
14.
When are we going to jail?
Don't ask me to get the permit.
When are we going to jail?
In the write-up about proposed improvements to 2020, on the 15th hole, it talks about reconstruct 4 greenside bunkers. Are those 4 that were not rebuilt a couple of years ago, or are we reconstructing them again?
Those, I believe, Jack, I'd have to verify this with Frank, but I believe those are new. In fact, we redo our bunkers every 5 to 7 years, so that's kind of an ongoing process that you kind of leapfrog and you do some holes and then we're very fortunate here in that our maintenance crew has been working with McDonald and Sons and with Keith Foster going back to the original project to such an extent that they know how to do a lot of work within our staff that otherwise we would have to hire out and bring somebody else in and do it. So we're actually very efficient when it comes to rebuilding tees, to rebuilding bunkers, and even getting back to the original green expansions. All of that work can be done by our crew, and we actually do that on a revolving basis, and that actually ends up saving us a lot of money.
I just couldn't remember how long ago it was, because I know it was a major reconstruction of the front bunkers.
Yeah, can I talk to you about that offline?
Yeah,
Because I don't know,
it's
I
not
can't
important.
answer
I
it.
was just wondering if we had a problem with the ones we constructed, or if we're,
Yeah, I think there was a temporary, I mean, there was a test liner put in one of those, but this is routine bunker maintenance, it's not.
I'm pretty sure, Jack, the front bunker and the right bunker were redone a couple of years ago.
right.
The four are the other three. The three on the left.
That's what I was
are back.
wondering, because it only said 4 and there's four bunkers out there.
I think it's the two that were done.
I can't tell you that authoritatively, that's why I'm
That makes
hedging.
sense, I just didn't know, I just wanted clarification.
Okay.
Question, I wanted to speak about the cart paths, but I wholeheartedly agree with what you said. One of the things besides the dust factor just being annoying, for those of us who wear contact lenses, you get particle of dust in your eye in the golf course, that's the end of the golf. You pack it up and you drive in, it's happened to me. And I'll tell you right now, it didn't happen here, it happened in East Harvest. So, for those of us who do have contact lenses, it's a real concern when you're leaving the tee and you're 10 feet behind the car in front of you. It's a real concern. So I'm very much in favor of doing something to dramatically improve that situation on the car paths.
The other thing besides our enjoyment is that our cart paths right now are not built to accept our equipment and the size of our equipment, so that's just another issue. There's a lot of wear and tear that occurs to our equipment just because we don't have cart paths that are adequate to meet their needs.
Just a couple.
Sure, go ahead.
Keep going. We'll get
Now's your chance.
In a couple of places you talk about coastline preservation. You talk about coastal erosion and you never mention flooding. I think you should be adding in flooding, control erosion and flooding. Because we're pretty much taking care of erosion, but flooding is going to be with us way beyond any of us sitting here. And it still may be some things that we're going to have to do with this. The man-made dune down at the bottom of the 18th fairway is flooding. That's not for erosion, that's to keep those floodwaters out of the 18th fairway. We still have the 7T area where a lot of, knows where it's going to happen. It's like 20, 30 years ago, it would be a different set of circumstances. So I would just encourage you to think about adding flooding as part of that concern so people don't distract with it.
Yeah, I defer to people that have more experience with that, Jack, than myself, but I don't know what we're going to do to prevent a 10-foot storm surge from keeping water off of the 6th fairway like we had happen 3 times last winter, the winter before last.
Yeah. That was about it. It's just a few little minor items like that. I will say that, like someone mentioned earlier, this balancing of the championship golf course for skilled players with a recreational golf course for the rest of us. In the last 41 years, I've probably played at most of those skill levels, but I know which way I'm trending. And
We're getting better and better, Jack.
I forget my bad shots quickly, I do that. But I really think it is important because this is a members club, and just having shorter tees does not necessarily make it an easier experience on the golf course. So when the playing conditions of the golf course are as exact as they are, which are incredible, I think that's much more difficult for the average player. For instance, when you go down to some other courses that are very similar to us, like Hyannis Court, the approaches at Hyannis Court have just that little bit more grass on it, gives you more options as to how to shot takes plenty of skill. Whereas here, there's just so little grass. If you're not, a good enough player to take out that wedge and tip it perfectly, you're putting. I think you're in Ireland. You're putting way off of the green. And I know you like to do that, so I knew I'd get a laugh from you. I've never seen anybody putt as far off as you, except maybe Joy. But I think we have to keep that in mind. That, the PGA Tour guys, only used to be here 1 day a year, and there's the rest of us the rest of the year. So just having a shorter course doesn't mean that that's necessarily easier for recreation.
Yeah, we can certainly discuss that at committee level. I think you're really referring to the tight lies. Is that what you're concerned about, that challenge? You did take a little of my thunder in terms of shortening the golf course. We're always attempting to find ways to make it more playable for the shorter players, and evidence the new tee on 11, which has gotten great reception. But other things that we've been undertaking in the last couple of years is cutting the rough at a lower level. We cut about 3/4 of an inch lower now than we had been in the past, and just so people understand what implications come with that, it's more expensive to do it that way, because the shorter that you cut grass, the more prone it is to disease, and the more maintenance you have to put into actually taking care of the turf itself and the health of the grass. So there are trade-offs with everything that we do out here, but you're concerned about the tight line in particular, and we can certainly revisit that as a committee and see what we want to do.
It's a different golf course since the restoration in terms of conditioning. Everybody knows that. The fairways and the approaches used to have a little bit more grass there, so it's easier for the weaker player to get the ball in.
Yeah, the rationale or the reasoning behind cutting it the way that we do is this is designed to play like a link-style golf course. And myself excluded from the fact that, yes, I do putt off the greens, but I think it's not just the putting aspect of it, it's taking an iron and running an iron into these greens. This is not a target golf course. This is not where you're necessarily supposed to throw the golf ball powering up in the air and drop it down on it like a dart onto a dartboard. It's meant to be played on the ground, from running your shots in, and I've read quite a few books and had the experience of playing links golf, and there's something that's just really joyous about hitting a golf shot where you get to watch the ball roll around the contours of the fairways and the approaches and the greens. And so again, I don't dispute that is more difficult for the less skilled golfer, but it's also one of the great joys in the game too, to be able to see the ball play that way. And the longer you get the turf, the less likely you're going to be able to execute those shots. That's what we will debate within the committee, what the trade-offs are.
Well, I hit a lot of ground balls, so that's not a problem.
Any other thoughts, folks? Because it's a great opportunity. And again, this isn't your only opportunity. There's a lot of people on the committee. John, if you could get back to the committee makeup, just so folks can see who is on the committee. Again, my email address here if you want to reach out to me. Oh, Peter, yeah.
Randy, first of all, congratulations on the plan. I think it's a great plan, and most importantly, I like to see it's documented the way it is, so only kudos there. I do have a maintenance question, though. I noticed the reemergence of the red vines, sticker vines in the fescue that we had last year. Is there a plan to do something about that? So.
Yeah, that's where we utilize those young college kids who just get out there with a machete. I think Ed just referenced that he saw them out there with machetes cutting that stuff out. So it is being worked on. Yeah.
I'm just curious, how do you do that without affecting the fescue?
You get in there with gloves and a machete and you pull it out and you lop it off right at the bottom, right at the base. I mean, there's no easy way to do it. It's very labor intensive, but that was my personal pet peeve last year, was all those vines in there, because I'd walk out of the fescue with both ankles bloody from doing that. And I think it's not only a playability issue, it's a safety hazard. So they are on it, maybe not as fast as they should be, so I'll talk to Frank about it and make sure that we get to it. Todd.
Right, just a thought, that if those are the odds and ends, if those are our problems, we're actually in really good shape. The Green Committee is doing an outstanding job. The course looks tremendous. I do want to throw out a thank you to Jason. Yesterday we were walking, and we were on 6 and 7 when it started to rain. The first thing that happened is he sent a guy out with extra towels for us. When we got to 6, the thunder came out. So he sent a group out because we were walking with carts. So we had the ability to get back quicker in case that alarm went off. So that was really, really terrific service. I do want to applaud Jason.
Doing a great job, Jason.
My team, Randy, they're making me look good.
So don't be strangers. If you have any other things that you'd like to share about the golf course, if you're not comfortable sharing it, there are no such things as dumb questions. It takes a very, very long time to get ramped up on agronomy and how this golf course is maintained and what it takes and all the troubles that we could face if we didn't have the right people in place. But we're very fortunate to have those people that we have.
Randy, just one quick question. I believe the answer is yes, but there is a funding source for all of the work that you are planning over the next 5 or 6 years, correct?
Yeah, that funding source is the long-term capital plan of the club. So this, I don't have the number, I can't pull it out of my hat right now, but the number for that project, if it were to have been executed in 2019, would have been about $385,000, I believe, but we always have placeholders, like with the irrigation system that's being proposed for 2022, 2023. There are placeholders the finance committee puts together for any type of capital project that needs to occur, that changes over time, but yeah, there are financial instruments in place to do this. We're not looking to assess the membership to make changes in the golf course.
Randy, in the document, just for clarity, the placeholder for 2020 is $400,000, but as Randy said 3 times, I think, this is dependent on our golf course architect. And once that man or woman is hired and we then go forward with he or she, then we'll be able to put a better number on it. The placeholder is $400,000.
I object to my brother answering my question.
In the good old days. Better get together more often.
I know the feeling.
Well, I thank you all again for coming. I appreciate it. You're obviously here because you care about the golf course. I can assure you that we do as well, and we take our responsibility very seriously. So, thanks for your support.
It's